In endgame content, by far the hardest things to manage are the damage checks. Day 1 raids are starting to get easier and easier to survive in, but to me, it seems like that's been paired with bosses that are beefier than ever before, and this gets even worse in master raids if you aren't of power. Yo, what's going on guys? It's G Miners here, and in this video, I'm going over an S tier hunter setup to maximize your DPS against endgame bosses. I put out my Titan version of this exact same build, and you guys loved it. A few of you even stopped by my stream to tell me how much you use it in raids, so today we have an even better setup for hunters. Unlike Titans, hunters are going to be able to bypass all of their reloads for a damage phase, at least when you have to reload, because sometimes Vice Stinger will prevent the need to. But then we are also going to be getting an extra boost in damage that no other class has access to, which makes our DPS even better. I would definitely say this is one of the best builds to run for day 1 raids, especially against boss encounters. That might change slightly when div is nerfed if you do need hunters on tether, but for the most part, only chaining supers together is going to beat out this DPS. If you guys do like these endgame content DPS builds and you want to see more like them, make sure to drop a like and sub down below. Only around 17% of you guys that watch these videos are actually subscribed, so smack that red button and let's get into the build. So within the Stasis subclass, obviously you aren't going to have another option, but in the off chance that we do get more supers, I think Silence the Squall is actually perfect because it is an instant pop super that does damage and will eventually also be buffing our damage too. Marksman dodge is going to be the dodge that we run because that allows us to bypass 1 reload during a damage phase, maybe 2 if you end up running high mobility and you have a longer DPS duration. Our shurikens for our melee are going to also aid in the instant reload. Not that you can run anything else, but these are also great as they work at super far ranges. And then lastly, for your grenade, run whatever you want. The main thing that we do need here is at least 1 stasis crystal to break so that we get increased grenade regen, which each grenade is eventually going to have. I personally think dusk fields are better for the mid game and for spawn trapping, but that is your call. For our aspects, first up is going to be Touch of Winter. This enhances our grenades, so each one of them now basically creates a stasis crystal upon use, which is what we needed, and Dusk Fields are going to get a bump to their radius, and then Cold Snaps also end up chaining 1 additional time so they can freeze more enemies. Second to this is going to be Grim Harvest, which now gives us the ability to generate stasis shards. These shards are then going to give us increased melee ability energy at base, and to spawn them in, we just need to defeat a slowed or frozen target. These aspects, in my opinion, aren't anything special, but they do give us 5 fragment slots to work with, which ends up making the build extremely strong. So first up, we are running Whisper of Torment. This gives us grenade energy each and every time we take damage. It does have a 1-second cooldown, but we get 4% each tick, which is super solid. However, if we are critically wounded, then we get 16.7% each tick, which means we could get our grenade back in just 6 seconds. Whisper of Chains is up next. This gives us a crazy ass 40% damage reduction whenever we are near a frozen target or a stasis crystal, which should be very often with this build. So this is just going to bump our tankiness up to the roof when combined with tier 10 resilience and then also double chest piece mods. Whisper of Conduction allows stasis shards to now track to our position, which is nice because we don't need to go out into dangerous areas to get them, but also so that we can get Font of Might to proc in damage phases if a Titan ever generates these with their grenade. Whisper of Shards is going to give us increased grenade recharge rate anytime we destroy a stasis crystal. This is going to be 500% increased base grenade regen rate, and it lasts for 6 seconds at base, and then up to 10 seconds if we destroy multiple crystals. And lastly, Whisper of Impetus is going to allow our melee attacks to reload our stowed weapons. Now this says stowed, but it actually does just do everything. So we don't actually need to swap to get this to reload our heavy weapon, which is going to be amazing. And we also are going to get increased handling when doing this. It's going to be plus 40 handling. So if you do end up needing to swap for whatever reason, this also helps a bunch. So the essence of our subclass is going to be to increase the amount of shots we hit by just decreasing the time we spend reloading. Our mods, weapons, and then exotics, on the other hand, are going to increase the damage that we deal to the max. So starting with our exotic, we are going to be running Mask of Bacchus, which actually gives us a 10% increase in weapon damage whenever we dodge. Now this lasts 10 seconds, but it only applies for arc weapons or all weapons that are damaging a slowed or frozen combatant, which means we are going to be able to cast super, dodge, and then get 10 seconds of increased damage. In shorter damage phases, you can just do this immediately, and then in longer damage phases, you can just do this after you need to use your first reload, so you don't waste your dodge without using it to reload. After this, for our mods, we are going to be running the following to maximize the duration we get for increased damage. So first is going to be elemental shards. This is going to allow stasis shards we collect to now count as stasis elemental wells. This will help increase the stasis weapon damage that we have, and as I mentioned, it is a great option if combined with a Titan using the same stasis DPS build, which I will have linked below. After this is going to be elemental time dilation, which now allows us to stack duration-based elemental well mods, and then we get increased duration for each additional mod stacked. Lastly, we are going to be running 3 copies of the mod Font of Might. This is going to give us a 25% weapon damage boost to all stasis weapons when collecting a stasis elemental well, or whenever we now collect a stasis shard. And because we do have 3 of these stacking with elemental time dilation, we get 21 seconds of increased damage rather than just the base 11 seconds. For damage, you will also want a God rolled Reed's Regret if possible. This is going to be triple tap to give us the most amount of shots, and then firing line to give us the largest buff. And then this is also going to pair with everything. So we now get a buff, a debuff, Font of Might, and Mask of Bacchus to stack, giving us a damage increase in most setups of 2.23x our normal damage, when most other setups don't stack this high and take way more setup than this one actually does. The Bacchus for the setup is also an extra 10%, which, as I mentioned, works with everything. So even here, when I ran out with all heavy ammo, I was still able to hit for 70k against Oryx with Arbalest, which is super solid. Now, the main reason this setup is going to be so strong is because a Warlock with Well of Radiance is able to run the mod Supreme Wellmaker. This will spawn in 3 stasis elemental wells when casting super, which means as soon as a damage phase starts, we can now have Font of Might up for the max duration, and we can refresh it by grabbing extra wells that are spawned in. This is currently the best DPS setup in the entire game, to my knowledge, that is actually easy to pull off, other than maybe chaining supers. The Titan version of this build is also linked below. If you guys haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check it out. And for those of you who have watched it, let me know which build you think is better and why in the comments below. I do also stream a bunch over on my Twitch, usually 9 p.m. Eastern, where we do low mans and speedruns. If you guys want to watch live, a link to that and my Discord server are in the description below. Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. As always, have a good one. Peace.